Most B2B sales processes have the same problem. They describe what the seller does at each stage, send an email, book the demo, send the proposal, but they don't say anything about what the buyer needs to do or what needs to be true before the deal can actually move forward and progress. And that distinction is the difference between a to-do list and a sales process. And it's why most pipeline is actually less reliable than how it looks in your CRM. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 6 stages of a B2B sales process that we install for our clients and explain why each stage exists, what it does, and what has to happen before we can move on to the next stage. So stage 1 is discovery, and it's actually the most important stage in the entire process. Most founders actually rush this stage. They're really excited about their product. They want to show it off. They treat discovery as like a tick box exercise before they do a demo. And that's a big mistake that costs deals. Real discovery does 3 really important things. Number 1, it uncovers the pain, not surface level pain, but the underlying business impact. What's this costing the organization in time, in revenue, in headcount? What happens if this doesn't get fixed? What's the impact? It surfaces a compelling event. The reason this is a priority right now, not in 6 months' time, but now. A new leadership, a competitive threat, a board-driven initiative. Without a compelling event, there's no urgency. And without urgency, that kills deals. And it establishes the relationship foundation. The buyer who feels genuinely understood, not sold to, is the buyer that brings you back into the room with other stakeholders for another conversation. So the rule in discovery is to ask more than you pitch. The rep who understands the problem most deeply is the one generally that wins, not the one with the best product. Stage 2 is scoping. So this is where what you learn in discovery gets translated into insight that helps you define the solution. So what specifically needs to change? What does success look like on their terms, using their numbers? What's in scope? What's out of scope? So scoping does 2 really important things. First, it gives you the information that you need to build a proposal, and one that's written in their language about their problem, not a generic template with the company name just slightly changed, but something specific to them. So secondly, it starts to give you the value case. When you scope it properly, you're building the foundation of the ROI conversation that's going to help you close the deal. You're agreeing on what success looks like even before you present a price. So scoping is where you start to identify all the stakeholders that are involved in the decision-making process. That then takes us to stage 3. So stage 3 is the economic buyer meeting. And this is the stage that most founders and their sales teams actually either skip or they delay or they just mess up. The economic buyer is the person that has discretionary control over budget. It's not the user, it's not the sponsor, it's the person that can say yes when everyone else says no. Now, most sales processes actually never get there. Reps default to the easiest person to speak to or the most accessible person to speak to, the one that's friendly, the one that says, oh, this looks interesting, but the person that actually can't make a buying decision. The economic buyer meeting matters for 2 really important reasons. First, it confirms that the deal is real. If a champion can't or won't get you in front of an economic buyer, then that tells you something important about the strength of your champion or the seriousness of the opportunity. Number 2, it gives you the information that you need to close. The economic buyer has a different set of concerns and issues to the day-to-day contact that you may be speaking to. They care about risk, ROI, strategic fit, and actually what happens if this doesn't work. If you don't understand those concerns, then your business case is going to completely miss its mark. You've got to get to the economic buyer early, and pretty much everything depends on you doing that successfully. So stage 4 is the validation event. So this is where the buyer gets to test your solution against their specific situation. It's a proof of concept, it's a pilot, it's a detailed technical session, it's a reference call with an existing client, something like that. And the validation event does 2 important things. Number 1 is that it removes the technical or operational risk associated in the buyer's mind. So they're not just taking your word for it, they've actually seen it work in practice with their data on their terms. And it also creates internal momentum. The people that are involved in the validation event become stakeholders in the outcome. They've invested time, which then strengthens your internal grip inside that account. So one important thing to note about the validation event, it should be earned. Don't just give it away for free. Don't just run a proof of concept, an unqualified opportunity. By the time you reach that stage, the economic buyer should be engaged and the deal should be real. So you're not wasting your time at that stage. Stage 5 is the business case. And this is where most deals are actually won and lost. Even though most founders think that closing happens in stage 6, it actually pretty much happens in stage 5. So the business case is not a proposal. It's a structured document that makes the commercial argument for the decision. It uses the buyer's language. It uses the buyer's numbers against the buyer's strategic priorities that they've told you in the discovery stage. It quantifies the cost of the current situation. It defines the value of the proposed solution in measurable terms, and it addresses the risk of change. It's a document that they can use to sell internally to procurement, to finance, to any other stakeholders when you're not in the room. So a well-built business case actually removes the need for you, the founder, to be in every single situation, because that document should help you do the selling for you. Once the economic buyer approves it, you're pretty much where you need to be. And then stage 6 is the final proposal and close. And if you've done stage 1 to 5 properly, then this stage should be the least dramatic of the previous 5 stages. The proposal, it's not a new document. It's a commercial summary of everything that's been agreed so far. The scope, the timeline, the commercials, the success criteria. Nothing in it should surprise the buyer because it's been built with the conversations that you've had in stage 1 to 5. So the close conversation, similarly, shouldn't be a negotiation. It just should be a confirmation of what you've agreed. You've quantified the pain. You've agreed the success criteria. You've given the champion the tools to sell internally. The economic buyer is engaged and they're informed. The compelling event is active and it's alive. If the deal stalls at stage 6, it's almost always something was missed in one of the earlier stages. A champion wasn't as strong as you thought they were. An economic buyer wasn't that engaged. A business case wasn't really addressed. It didn't really address the main business pain that they were experiencing. And that's why the process matters. It's not a checklist, but it's a diagnostic. And when something goes wrong, the process tells you where exactly it broke down and actually what to fix. So again, the 6 stages are discovery, scoping, economic buyer meeting, validation event, business case, and final proposal and close. So each stage has a specific job. Each one builds on the last. And when all 6 stages are done properly with the right qualification discipline running underneath, you end up with a sales process that's predictable, it's inspectable, and you can transfer it to your team. And that's what it takes to build a revenue system that doesn't depend on you, the founder. If you want to see how we implement this process for B2B tech companies, there's a link below, or drop me a message. I'd love to hear from you and I'd love to hear where you're at with it. Speak soon.